Good evening, my fellow extraterrestrials. Well, it's evening for me anyway. And this time, I'm going to attempt to do, not really a scripted video, but I'm going to try to follow along with the blog. So I've got it pulled up in front of me here. Because I know the last one was probably the longest I've ever done. I think that one was even longer. It was longer than the one I did for the pandemic. That one. And that one was a long one. Sometimes I just get carried away. So I'm gonna try to follow along with this one. This one is all about Earth being a sentient being for Earth Day. And if you get this joke, we can be friends. If you get the joke, you're on the right channel. Anyway, sentience. What is sentience? Well, it's described as having awareness and being able to respond to your environment. So it basically is, you know you're here, you know where you are, and you react to things that are also here and interacting with you. We would consider that sentience. That would be like the quick, dumbed down version of sentience, right? Well, you would think that there wouldn't need to be a debate, a discussion, that scientists wouldn't need to be prevailed upon to agree that other things besides us, besides Homo sapiens, humans, have sentience, right? You would just think living things in general, anything with the ability to respond to its environment and clearly displays awareness has sentience. No. Apparently this is something that requires debate. Some people, it's kind of like, this is where it comes into belief. Some people think that things don't have souls. Now, souls, that's a much more difficult argument, right? Because what makes up a soul? And that's a whole big thing. And again, I covered that so much in my book and in other writings, and being a better writer than I am a speaker, I tend to cover that in great detail more in writing, and I don't really talk about the soul as much if I can avoid it, because there's just so much that goes into it, and we really would be here all day. That would be a video. And when it comes to sentience, that is a little less complex. That should be easier to describe, easier to convey, but just like it's difficult to argue what constitutes a soul, it's difficult to argue sometimes even what constitutes life, because in my opinion, I think viruses should count, but they don't, because they're lacking 2 of the criteria. Like at least there's 8 criteria that are specified in stone what is considered life. Well, I mean, that's a whole different, and at one point I do intend to write a full blog about that and discuss that, because I have mentioned it in other things briefly, just like I'm doing now, that I think viruses should count, but that's a different thing. Now, as for sentience, so I actually, like I said, I'm going to follow along with the blog because I gave the exact definition for sentience in the blog, because I think it should be obvious. But part of it is capable of sensing and feeling. Now, again, and I pointed this out during my tardigrade video, scientists want to try and present arguments against other things being able to sense or feel. And how do they know? That bothers me. The presumption and the audacity and there's a long list of words, some of them not so nice, that I have for assuming that human beings are the only creatures capable of sensing or feeling things. Like, nothing else has any sort of perception. Really? We really think we're that great? I mean, the fact that we've had to argue for so long about like even animals that quite clearly display emotion and sensing things and feelings and all that, like kitty cats and dogs and things, like the fact that we have to argue so much about what constitutes a living thing, what constitutes having feelings, what constitutes having sentience. Remember the whole argument about cooking like crabs and lobsters and seafood? Do I have a... Okay, that is gonna bother me. But anyway, ignore that. It's gonna be one of those weird hair days for me. Ignore that. The fact that we had to have an argument about, you know, whether or not it was cruel to boil sea creatures alive, and you could hear them screaming, and like that they were screaming, likely in pain, and we had to fight about that. This sort of thing, this really annoys me. I don't think it comes down to a spiritual argument. I don't think we should have to bring science or religion or anything into it. I think if you have a soul, if you have a conscience and a soul, when you see those reactions, when you hear those reactions in any other living creature, not just Homo sapiens, anything, you should have some kind of compassion, of empathy, of something. So I get a little bit passionate about that, and I get a little bit less objective than I normally am when it comes to things like the argument of sentience and souls and that sort of thing, because I just don't have it in me to be so dismissive and to disregard other living creatures and life and things that aren't human. And I personally obviously don't think humans are really all that great to begin with. Like, what makes us so special? And even if we are the greatest things, even if we are the greatest, most intelligent, most whatever, and even if we are capable of feeling more things than other things and or whatever, that does not mean that we have the right to dismiss the awareness or feelings or sentience of other living creatures. Now, having gotten that little mini tirade out of the way, so suffice to say, the actual definition of sentience, the dictionary definitions of sentience, is having consciousness, being able to sense, feel, being responsive to environmental stimuli and sensations, which we can observe in pretty much everything. And I do mean pretty much everything. So I break it down in this blog because it's not just about, you know, like animals that we can see that are moving about and here, there, and everywhere. And like I mentioned in the tardigrade tirade, you know, because tardigrades are microscopic, but I can make the argument that they have sentience, they have awareness, and they respond. And so it isn't just about like animals, because tardigrades are animals, but they're microscopic ones, and it isn't just about whether or not we can see them. It's also about plants. And I give 2 examples. I could give so many more, but like I said, I'm trying to keep this, but I give 2 really good examples in my blog of plants displaying consciousness and awareness and sentience and being able to respond and react to environmental stimuli. And that's the thing. They're plants, right? You wouldn't think about, like, maybe you're on board with me about animals having sentience and consciousness and all of that, but you wouldn't think about things like, say, trees. I'm sure that at this point you're looking at me like I'm a bit nuts. I promise I'm not, well, I might be insane. I mean, it depends on your definition. But I have a perfectly reasonable and scientific explanation for my argument for trees having sentience. Okay? So, again, sentience is displaying awareness. Displaying awareness as in responsiveness to sensations and your surroundings and what's going on. A response to external stimuli. That's a display of sentience right there. All right. Now, so there's a couple of neat things that trees do. If there's something literally bugging them, like an ant, a bug, crawling on them, bugging them, pun intended this time, they can respond to that in multiple ways. So they can release chemical defense mechanisms. They can defend themselves against the bug. They can also communicate the threat of the bug, because, like, they know where there's one ant, there may be more. And they can communicate this to other trees. That's right, the trees are talking to each other. There is science to support it. There is studies and evidence and all of that. All of that has been accepted into mainstream science. This is not just like a fringe theory, oh, the trees can talk. No, no, no. This is accepted science in mainstream science. The trees are communicating. The trees are responding. The trees are dealing with pesky little pest-like ants. Sentience. Right there. That is a display of responding to external stimuli, of reacting to sensations, the feeling that, like, we all react to bugs crawling on us, right? Like, nobody wants that. Ew. And to me, the fact that scientists, mainstream scientists, have studied and provided evidence for it, and it has been accepted into mainstream science, that right there is enough of an argument for any of the other things we might have doubts about. Because, like, even me, okay, I don't see why there should be any doubt in things like crabs and lobsters and such. I mean, you can literally see them responding to you, making faces at you, avoiding you, reacting to you. Like, I never understood why there was any argument there for sentience, right? But trees? They're not as emotive, right? They're not making faces at you. They're just sort of there. So, like, the fact that we have a plant example in mainstream science to support that plants can have sentience, there should not be an argument for any other living creatures, for certainly not for any animals. There should not be an argument about this. So before I get overly carried away on that particular sentiment, pun intended again, the other example I gave, fungi. And I promise I won't get carried away with like, every fungi pun has been done, I'm sure. I'll behave myself. It's tempting, but as much as I love puns and fungi, because they may not be sea creatures, but fungi, mold, lichen, all that sort of thing, they are still, that's another category of interesting, almost alien, unique species and things that I'm tickled by them. So, especially now that we have discovered some more interesting things about them. And again, I'll leave some of the funnier, less mature things out of this because we'll just devolve if I get into some of that. But because there was a whole scientific article, like I'll just straight up say what it was, and we'll move on. We'll just quickly, but I have to share it because it's going to bother me if I don't. But there was a whole scientific article published in an actual legit mainstream science magazine all about the flagellants of certain fungi. You see why I'm struggling here, because flatulence will never not be funny. Anyway, moving on, before I make any puns like, what a gas. Okay, it's out of my system now, I'm done, I promise. The actual scientific evidence and examples and what we have discovered about the sentience of fungi is that they have this whole underground network of like little phalanges, if you will, mycelium. They have a whole network underground that they give like electrical signals and chemical signals to communicate. Very similar to how the brain works, actually. It's like an intricate little interwoven network, kind of like the brain and the nervous system in the brain and all of that going on in the neurons. And just like we process and receive and interpret and give orders, bodily orders to ourselves, and all that with information in the brain through chemical responses, through electrical pulses, all of that. Hey, guess what? So do mushrooms. The fungi have their own external brain system happening and are communicating via the same sort of methods, electrical pulses and chemical. Like, if there is something to be said, something to be conveyed among the other fungi. So to me, that's just fascinating. Um, the fact that both trees and mushrooms can communicate with one another in similar ways that our brains communicate with us, that we interpret and process information, electrical and chemical responses. And they do so in response to external stimuli in their environment. Well, that is a display of sentience. So if trees and mushrooms and all manner of living creatures on this planet can display sentience, have sentience, communicate with one another, and for the most part, with each other, not just like within their species, and not even just within their kingdom, phylum, all that. No, like it seems like all creatures, right? Like all of the life on this planet is almost interconnected in this planetary web of, it's like something that we are disconnected from. Like human beings, and I have made this argument before, and here's where we get a little bit theoretical here, because I have made this argument before that I don't 100% think that we are a natural thing. Like I don't think we happened naturally by happenstance by evolution on the planet as we've been taught. I think, like, I'm not saying aliens had anything to do with it. I mean, it's a possibility. I'm not saying they didn't have anything to do with it. There's, like, I present so many different theories in my book about how we got here. And, like, I'm not going to sit here in a video and read, like, the entire book to you or the whole auger plate theory thing that I presented or any of that. But what I will say is, given how unnatural we seem and how potent our DNA seems and just out of place on this planet we seem, like I can understand how some can come to the conclusion that we might be alien, we might be foreign, we might be a, like I put it as, we're almost like an invasive species because Homo sapien is the only surviving hominid, so it's almost like we showed up and took out all the others. And that's just a potential theory that like I presented in other videos and I've talked about before. But the fact of the matter is, we don't seem to be part of this global conscious connection between all the other life forms on this planet. It's like they're all connected and they're all able to communicate non-verbally with one another, and we just aren't part of that. Which suggests one of two things. Either we're not from this planet, we are alien, or the other option that I have also given consideration to and discussed before is the potential that a previously advanced race, maybe a coalition of the previous hominid races on this planet, created us. Like we might be artificial. We might be androids that were created to be subservient to our creators, or, and like sometimes I think, because I don't want to get all down that either, but sometimes I think history does repeat itself, and like we're already kind of repeating that process. We are doing the same thing, trying to make hominid robots, human-like robots and things. So it's entirely possible that we aren't connected to the other living things. Like maybe all the other life forms on this planet are able to communicate with one another non-verbally via chemical responses, via electrical impulses, whatever. And we're the only ones like who don't speak the language, so to speak. So to sum it up, I think as far as sentience goes, all living things have sentience. I would make the argument all living things have sentience. Now, given that planet Earth is covered in living things that all seem to be communicating with one another, and all of these living things, like some of what they have in common, like they're made of matter, and all matter produces some sort of electromagnetic field, and all of these living things have their own electromagnetic fields. Non-living things on this planet, because like rocks, they're made of matter too. They have their own electromagnetic fields. So now we're getting into like the forces of physics and whether or not, and I've used the forces of physics before as an example for like one potential ingredient that goes into the overall making of consciousness, if you will, like what constitutes consciousness. Um, and that being said, the planet, all planets, all celestial bodies in the cosmos, all things made of matter, again, have electromagnetic fields. The planet has an electromagnetic field. The planet gives off forces. All of these things are all the time reacting to one another, communicating with one another. I mean, how do you, like, you can't disprove me on this one. How do you prove whether or not the Earth has consciousness? The Earth is made of matter, gives off the physical forces that exist everywhere in the cosmos, here, in all living things, in all matter. I mean, we don't know what makes up consciousness. We try to define it the same way we try to define sentience. We try to say, okay, well, sentience is to have consciousness, but sentience is a part of consciousness, so which one is it? Which one makes up the other? Are they a part of each other? We go around in circles. It's like we're chasing our own tails with definitions. Why? Because all of this is far beyond Homo sapien comprehension, right? So you can't disprove that the Earth isn't a living thing with lots of living things on it, and that we're not all part of some, like our bodies. Our bodies, for example, are made up of so many, like, you think you're alone here? No, we've got a whole ecosystem going on. We have a whole bunch of microbial life, all of these different life forms on our body, in different parts of our body, doing different things, interacting with one another all the time. And again, because they are reacting to external stimuli and one another, and they're responsive and all that, I would argue they have sentience as well. I don't care if they're microbes, they have sentience. We are also made up of viruses too, which are in the non-living category according to the 8 criteria in science, but they go into making up us and interacting with other microbes. Do you see how complex this gets? This is one of those mostly metaphysical arguments here. Well, we are talking about sentience, which is metaphysical. So the whole thing, you cannot find physical evidence or proof per se. Like, this is a very philosophical and spiritual discussion as well. This isn't just about the metaphysics and about the science and the evidence here. This is also, this is where you would have your spiritual and maybe some of your religious overlap and the philosophical as well, because we're talking about consciousness isn't just whether or not you're aware of something and can react to it. It's also things like memory and thoughts and feelings. So now we're getting into, like, can the planet have thoughts? Can the planet have memories and feelings? You see? And here I was trying to not go off in 20 different directions, and I was trying to keep this. I should have known that with this subject matter, that wasn't going to happen. With this subject matter, this is one of those things where we could go in so many different directions with this conversation. This was done for Earth Day. This was more about loving the Earth. So if I'm just sticking with like the point of this video, the purpose of this video, the point of this video was to treat Earth with some kindness and some respect. And I mean, this is the planet that allows us to live here, may or may not have spawned us, given us life. This is Mother Earth. I make a few jokes and references in this blog about that. And again, this blog was written for Earth Day. So, like, the whole point of Earth Day is to remind us to be kind to the planet and not destroy our home. Because, hey, we kind of have to live here. And before anybody comes at me with that whole, well, we're getting technologically advanced enough to go off into space, like, I got news for you. We are not as capable as we think we are. One, that's human arrogance. And two, personally, I don't think we should be going anywhere. Like, there's so much on this planet to explore and to learn. We don't know enough about this planet. We don't appreciate this planet enough. And honestly, the way we treat this planet, do you really think we deserve to go to another planet? We don't appreciate this one. We're mistreating this one. And if the ancient astronaut theorists are right and there's aliens keeping us here and keeping an eye on us, with the way we treat one another and the way we treat this planet and how toxic we all are, do you really think they're going to let us escape? Like, they're not letting us off of Earth. They're not letting us get out there. We're like an infection. We would just infect the cosmos. They are not letting that happen. Like, there's a whole nother. Again, you could go down so many avenues of thought here. If planet Earth has sentience, if this planet is capable of responding and sensing, well, what's to say that any other planet isn't? Maybe all of the planets are sentient. Maybe all matter contains some level of sentience. Now, the very first chapter of my book, The Lost Chapters of Humanity on Earth, I talk about genetic memory and how things may have been formed and consciousness and panpsychism and a lot of metaphysics right there in the very first chapter as an introduction. The reason being is because when exploring some of these theories that I offer, a lot of it comes down to not just the philosophical aspects and the spiritual aspects, but also the metaphysics. And that is a whole category of way beyond our understanding. And there's probably never going to be an ability to prove anything because we're not talking tangible physical things. We're talking thought, memory, consciousness, um, perception, all of which happens in the brain. Now, that being said, the reason that I'm always carrying on about it so much is because I know I don't know. Our brains, I think, though capable of, obviously, of thought, of feeling, of asking these questions. And asking questions is a very important thing, a very big thing. It shows that we have at least some potential, that we're able to ask questions and we're able to explore and we're able to think about things. But the fact that so much is beyond our comprehension, our understanding, we are not able to perceive in the ways in which other life forms are. Like, again, like I said, it's like they're all connected and they're all able to communicate in ways that we can't, and they're all able to perceive not only in ways that we can't, but other things that we can't, other potential dimensions, other potential space. We don't know what they are capable of. We really don't. Scientists like to think that they can put a definition on things. They like to think that they can quantify things. They cannot. And they can come at me all day with any argument that they want. Any scientist, I don't care who it is, I don't care how big of an expert in this field he is, they can come at me all day. You cannot disprove something has sentience. Just like you can come at me and say, well, you can't prove it does have sentience. You know what? You're right. I can't. There's plenty of evidence to say that it does, at least by the definition that we consider when we're talking about it responding and showing awareness and sensing. But we don't know. We don't know what other things are feeling because we are not those things. We don't know what they're thinking. We don't know what they're capable of perceiving. We don't know if they are capable of philosophical thinking, of asking questions, of things like we are. But then we do come across some of the more fascinating creatures, and we come across some of the displays of other living organisms that, by comparison, are not nearly as fascinating, and we wouldn't have expected this sort of thing from, like, sure, fungi, yeah, they're fascinating. They're unique, they're fascinating. I'll give it to fungi. Fungi, I'll allow. Trees? One can make the argument that trees are a little boring, right? They're not something you would expect to be more capable of something than we are, right? We should be more capable of anything, really, than trees, right? And that's the point I'm trying to make. Then we come across magnificent creatures like cephalopods. You know, an octopus has like twice the alleles that we have, and like I really ought to do a video on octopuses one day because there's a lot of fun and fascinating things about them too, but that's a whole, again, a whole nother thing. But the fact of the matter is, when you have creatures that are that fascinating and that much more complex and capable of things, like all various things that we write about in fiction as superpowers, but they can do it. When you have things like that on this planet, like, I'm sorry, I just don't think we're that special in comparison to the other life forms on this planet. That being said, since this video was about whether or not Earth has sentience, let's consider that if Mother Earth is the sum of all the living things on the planet, like an Akashic record or a collective consciousness, one could argue that because we live on this planet and we have sentience, as we like to describe it ourselves, we have sentience, and we have declared that other life forms besides us have sentience, we could argue that our sentience is part of Mother Earth's sentience. So there you have it. I hope I presented this argument in this video in such a way that you were able to follow. I know it's one of those difficult subject matters that we could really get carried away with down all different avenues. But yeah, again, I'm a better writer than I'm a speaker, and if you want to know more about this particular subject matter, or just want to verify that I present my arguments better in my blogs than I do in these videos, by all means, check out that blog. It's on my website. And even though this video is coming well and after the fact, I am getting caught up. I will get to a point where I will have the videos following the blogs like right after, and then I won't have to, like, yeah. Anyway, still, happy belated Earth Day. This was for Earth Day. Appreciate the planet. We live here. Stay extra, my fellow terrestrials.